What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. 2019 was a disappointing season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Most programs will be happy with an 11-2 year and beating Michigan in a pretty big bowl game, but not Alabama. This team wants a national championship every single year. We all know that. They had some issues last season, some things that kept them, I think, from getting there, and obviously LSU was just an unbelievable team, so that was one of the biggest problems. But we look ahead to 2020 and some of the biggest questions that are going to determine how good of a season they have. If they can answer all these questions in a positive way, I think this team has a shot to win a national championship. If they don't answer these questions in a positive way, I think it could be a similar season to what we saw last year. So let's get right into it. Our first question for Alabama: who will start at quarterback? Obviously, that is the number one question. Mac Jones looked pretty solid when he came in last year after Tua left, or went down with the injury, I should say. He had the pick sixes against Auburn, but all in all, I think he played pretty well, and he has plenty of talent around him. Will he be the starter, or will it be Bryce Young? That's going to be the story, I think, for Alabama. Not just who starts week one, but who's the starter at the end of the season. Who's the starter? Let's say they do make it to the college football playoff. Who's the starter when they get there? Will Bryce Young come in later on, kind of like Tua did for Jalen Hurts, which that wasn't until halftime in the national championship. But that's going to be a big question. Again, I'm not as concerned about who starts week one, because I do believe that will be Mac Jones. But who's going to be the starter once they get into really the meat of their schedule? That's going to be really interesting. And the production of that quarterback spot is going to determine a lot about Alabama's season in 2020. Next question: can the pass defense survive all the losses in the secondary? I mean, they got hit hard. Xavier McKinney, their leading tackler last season, gone. You lose Jared Maiden, Shaim Carter, Trayvon Diggs. Very, very talented players that they lost from their roster last season. Just looking at those guys in terms of interception, they lose 11 interceptions off of this roster last season. So that's going to be a big area of concern. Patrick Surtain is back. You're going to have some young guys step up, though, like Jordan Battle, Josh Jobe. We'll see if they're able to do that. If they struggle early in the year, I think they'll find their way by the end of the season. So at the end of the day, Alabama, it's Alabama. They reload. Their coaching staff is unbelievable. They're going to be fine. But how about early in the season against a team like USC that's going to be able to throw the football? Can they survive early in the season? They play Georgia early in the season as well, with this secondary that's going to be pretty young. And well, let's go to our next question now. Can Henry Ruggs and Jerry Judy's production be replaced? I know they have talent. I know the wide receiver position for this team is going to be okay. I mean, they've got Devontae Smith. They've got Jalen Waddle. They've got some young guys that should be able to step up for them. But you have to realize they lost two really good players in Jerry Judy and Henry Ruggs. And how many times do we see both of these guys just make little short catches and bust it for a big game? I mean, they were able to do that time and time again. That's why it was so easy for Mac Jones. Devontae Smith, we know what he's capable of. He is, to me, clearly their number one receiver. Jalen Waddle, an electrifying player, best punt returner or kick returner in the country, hands down. No one even comes close to him. I mean, he's just unreal. He needs to step up a little bit in his route running, his pass catching, to be that number two receiver, or perhaps maybe a slot receiver with his speed. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but it's going to be tough to replace both Henry Ruggs and Jerry Judy's production in 2020. We'll see if they can do that. Can the linebackers stay healthy? This is probably the biggest question for Alabama. You go back the last couple of years, they have had really bad luck with their linebackers getting injured. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, last year you lose Joshua McMillan. He didn't play at all, actually, and the year before he was injured in that season as well, played a little bit. Dylan Moses, they lost him. We know he is possibly the best linebacker in the country coming into 2020. They've got to keep those guys healthy. The good news for them is they got some younger players some playing time last year in Shane Lee and Christian Harris. So the force of those four linebackers all coming together, plus the other youngsters they've got on the roster, this linebacker group is going to be unbelievable if they can stay healthy. And that's the big question for Alabama. Can they keep those linebackers healthy? If they can, this defense, I think, goes back to being the Alabama defense we are used to seeing. Let's go to the next question. Can they beat Georgia? Not just beat Georgia, but can they beat Georgia potentially twice. Can they beat them twice? That is a big question, and maybe they don't have to play them twice, but maybe they do. If they play them, if they win in the regular, regardless of what happens in the regular season, it's very likely that Alabama and Georgia will meet again in the SEC championship. I know Alabama may not win the West, and if they don't win the West, then really this video is for nothing, because all these questions, I'm saying they need to have positive answers to these questions to make the college football playoff. And if they lose to Georgia, or if they don't win the SEC West, they're probably not going to make the playoff anyways. But let's say they do get to the playoff. Can they beat, to the SEC championship, I should say, can they beat Georgia a second time? That's a big question, and it's very hard to beat a team twice. So that's going to be really what I think could determine whether or not Alabama makes it to the college football playoff. It's, can they beat Georgia twice? They get them at home in the regular season. I like their chances there, but can they do it again a second time? And if they're able to run the table, it may not matter. If they lose to LSU or something, it may matter. But if they run the table and they're 12-0 and then they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship, it's not that big of a deal. They're probably still going to make the playoff with one loss. And even if they lose to Georgia in the regular season and then they beat them again in the SEC championship, then they're in there if they win the rest of their games. So if this team is able to beat everyone else, it's not such a big deal. You don't have to beat Georgia twice, but you look at the schedule and you look at the teams in the SEC that are improved. Texas A&M is going to be tough. LSU is going to be tough on the road. They'll play Auburn. It's, in my opinion, going to be tough for Alabama to beat everyone else on their schedule. I mean, they can do it. It's Alabama, but it's going to be tough. I kind of think that they're going to need to be able to beat Georgia twice to make the college football playoff. I think there could be another loss somewhere on that schedule. So you need to beat the Bulldogs 2 times. Can Alabama do that? That is the final question we have. And if they're able to do that, if they're able to beat Georgia in the regular season, beat them again in the SEC championship, obviously, even if they lose somewhere else, this team will make the college football playoff in 2020.